Hello and welcome to Viewpoint. The Commander British Forces, Commodore Tom Guy, has left the ROC after 4 years in post. He's been succeeded by Commodore Tim Davey. Tonight, we say goodbye to Commodore Guy in a one-to-one farewell interview. The Commander British Forces is a senior UK military officer in Gibraltar, responsible for commanding and coordinating British Forces Gibraltar and representing the military presence on the ROC. The role includes overseeing key assets such as the airfield, the naval base, the Royal Navy Gibraltar Squadron and the Royal Gibraltar Regiment, while supporting the UK's sovereignty and strategic interests on the ROC. The spotlight has recently been on Gibraltar's naval base, with the UK government's investment plan earmarking £1.9 billion for investment in Britain's overseas bases through to 2030, with a specific mention of support for the base in Gibraltar. The post of CBF is both operational and diplomatic. The commander manages day-to-day military activity, works with Gibraltar's civilian authorities and helps maintain Gibraltar's role as a strategic base in the Western Mediterranean. The position is usually held by a senior naval officer, a commodore, and recent commanders have described it as a major honour and privilege. CBFs on the ROC have formed very special bonds with the community, and, like governors, have continued to defend Gibraltar a lifetime after leaving their post. They have been staunch supporters and have contributed in associations and societies, continuing to fly the flag over the ROC.
It's all about us connecting with the community that we defend.
The post is also a social one, and many bid farewell to enduring friendships made during their time here with a heavy heart. Commodore Tom Guy and his wife Katie are no exception. Okay, so Commodore, may I ask you first, how are you feeling?
Sad. I think I'm also content, cautiously content with what we've achieved. And I don't mean the cautiousness to be negative at all. I just don't want to overstate things, but overwhelmingly sad to be leaving.
So now 4 years down the line, and if you look back when you first came, I believe it was almost 4 years to the day.
Correct.
How different has everything been?
I think when you're living through it, it's difficult to sort of gauge how, because it's that sort of boiled frog thing. But I think I have been looking around consciously over the last sort of couple of weeks and months at knowing that we're leaving, and it does look different. I think the estate, the MOD estate, looks better in many ways, and that's not to cast aspersions on what had gone before. It's just a recognition of the progress that the team have made. I think the whole sort of strategic landscape clearly looks very different, and that puts a different perspective onto what we have and what we do here. So it feels like we have made great progress. It also feels like there's probably still a lot more to do, though.
What happens now in terms of handing over the baton? I mean, I've just met your predecessor. Is a sort of briefing time, a time where you work together, or?
Yes, so I mean, it can be brutally short and sharp, as in here's the keys, I'm off. But and there is there's a naval tradition of handing over command in a very short and sharp way. But I thought it was much better for us to do a longer graduated handover. So Tim and I are taking the week. I'm showing him around, introducing him, giving him the context. He'll then build on that over the next few weeks. But I think it's really important for the good of the organisation that he understands how we've ended up where we are today, so he can continue to take it forward in whatever way he wants, but in an informed manner.
How difficult is that? Because you want to carry on what your previous CBF has done, but then of course you want to do things your own way.
Yes, I don't think that's difficult. I think it's really natural. I think it's really important that whoever is in command does things their way, but informed by what's gone before.
You have a lot in common with Commodore Davis, because you both have mine hunting in your past.
Him far more than me, but I think I have a lot in common with all of my successors, because they've all bar one been naval officers going right back to the mid 1700s, and that's not by accident. That's because a lot of what we do here is about the maritime domain, and that's the sort of the background that is needed. So it's natural, I think.
Okay, let's look back at those 4 years. You've had some interesting times, and the treaty must have taken up a lot of your time. If I can quote the Chief Minister in a letter to Sir Keir Starmer yesterday following the resignation, protecting the important equities of the MOD has been vital. That's in the treaty. So what do you think he means by that? What sort of work took place to get to that?
Yeah, so I think that's a reflection on the fact that we've got a very, very good relationship with the government of Gibraltar, which I think is absolutely vital. When you look at what the MOD is here, what it wants here, what it does for Gibraltar, and that has to be a sort of a symbiotic relationship. In terms of the treaty, what from a parochial MOD perspective, defence perspective, what we needed to do was to create conditions whereby we can work with Spain, our NATO ally, and continue to operate to, through, and from here unhindered. And I think it is no secret that for political reasons there has been a reluctance on Spain's part to meet that, but we've had very constructive dialogue throughout, and we've ended up in a position which both sides are content with.
And there must have been a lot of work in terms of infrastructure as well. I know that when you first started, I wasn't very sure about this. You were actually involved on whether pedestrians were going to cross the runway.
Yes, so I mean that we talk about what's changed. One of the big changes since I've arrived is that we no longer have cars driving across the runway routinely. So Kingsway Tunnel for us operating the airfield and therefore supporting the airport was a huge leap forward from a security perspective as well as a safety perspective. I think from our perspective, ideally we would have nobody crossing the runway. I mean it's unique to have that. And the reason for that is pure and simple security and safety.
It's funny because it's always been like a quirky thing, but nobody
Absolutely.
actually thinks of letting somebody just walk next to a plane.
Yeah, but and of course the security situation evolves as well, and we were involved in long discussions about that. But of course, because of the extra distance to go around Kingsway Tunnel, it is much more convenient for people to come straight across. So we've arrived at a compromise. I think there might well be times when we need to close that for security and safety reasons, but it'll be done after very careful deliberation and in consultation with the government.
Well, one thing you did say, relations with the government had been very good. There had been a dip in relations before your time, and I was wondering whether that had impeded your relationship at all with the government.
So I can't really comment on what happened before my time. All I can say is that I have not. I did not feel that as an issue.
What about the integration between the MOD and the civilian population? How does that work? Do you think that works okay?
I think it works amazingly well here for a number of reasons. First of all, there's the geography. We're all very close to each other, and you can't move around Gibraltar without being very close to some bit of the MOD estate. And then there's the history, and of course those two are really, really closely aligned. And I think because of the history, the people of Gibraltar, I know that's dangerous to make generalisations, but the people of Gibraltar, I think, have far greater affinity for being alongside the Ministry of Defence.
They've grown up with a naval base.
Exactly, and you might find in some garrison towns in the UK and around some air bases, you might find a similar thing, but in the UK it's small pockets, whereas here it's all of it, if you like. And so I think the relationship that defence has with the people it defends here is much more direct and much more positive, and that has lots of advantages. It enables us to do training here, very realistic training on public land that just doesn't happen anywhere else, that we do with the good support of the government. And when we're developing things, we have a really good relationship in terms of discussing how we can achieve what we need from a defence perspective whilst supporting wider Gibraltar.
You mentioned training, and we always hear about how strategic Gibraltar is as port in the Mediterranean. But what about for training? How important is it for training? Because we've got the tunnels of FIBA, fighting in built-up areas.
Yeah.
Impressive. We've also got the diving. So Gibraltar does offer a lot in terms of training, doesn't it?
I mean, it really does. I mean, it's no secret to say it's not huge in area, and because of that, there are things that we can't do. So, for example, we couldn't sort of fly troops in helicopters and drop them all over the place. But there's lots of other really great stuff that we can do, and we get about 2,500 soldiers a year coming from the UK to use the training facilities out here. And they love coming here because of the variety, because it's different, particularly the tunnel training. I mean, that has, as you have seen from what's gone on in the news, there is an obvious need for that sort of capability. The area for diving and diving training is fantastic. So it offers a lot in a very small area. The other advantage is it's a great place to come to. And so when we're in an environment where recruiting and retention is a challenge, what better thing to do than bring people out here into this wonderful place, give them some exciting training, and that just sort of leaves people feeling more invigorated and enthused.
When we mentioned the civilian population, of course, a lot of civilians work for the MOD.
Yes.
As well, so that cements a relationship. But another thing that does it very well is the British Forces Day, which has become a product of its own success.
Yeah, I mean, I think, by necessity, a lot of what we do is behind the wire, and for security, we wouldn't wish to broadcast it. But there's quite a lot that we do that we can just, we can be very proud of and demonstrate. And the open days that we've done here have just been fantastic. Hard work for the team, but the team has always reflected. The team's always reflected that it's worth it, because it's a way of demonstrating capabilities, and frankly, everybody likes to be proud of what they do and showing that off to family and friends and the public. And to go back to my earlier point, it gives people an insight into who we are and what we do here, and to an extent, why and how we do it.
So popular as well, the queues. The other thing, the naval base has been very busy with the conflict in the Middle East. Geopolitics has, I'm sure, kept you very, very busy. How happy are you with the resources, and whether you can actually fulfill the role?
Oh, absolutely. So, yeah, I mean, it's no secret that we're doing more here, and and a lot of that is directly and indirectly linked to what's going on in the Middle East, but also just operations elsewhere around the world. I think having made the commitment to really develop this place as militarily back into a well-found forward mounting base just over 4 years ago, that was the sort of trigger for, right, we're going to squeeze every bit of goodness we can out of this. Now we've made that commitment, and so we are using it as much as we can. And there are some fantastic examples of where what we have here has enabled us to get much more out of the fleet. Particularly the fleet, sort of Royal Naval Fleet and Royal Fleet Auxiliary assets here, and it speaks for itself, I think, in terms of what people see happening in the naval base.
We've recently seen proof of how a week in politics can be a very long time. We had a visit from the Armed Forces Minister, Colonel Al Kearns. He hinted that Gibraltar would see investment from the increase in defence spending, which of course neither he nor the Defence Secretary at the time John Healey thought went far enough, and which I believe Andy Burnham has actually advocated for. How welcome and necessary would this investment be if you want to carry on providing what you're providing and more?
Yeah, I think we can carry on doing a lot with relatively little. I mean, defence is expensive, infrastructure is expensive, but in relative terms, Gibraltar is good value for money. And my job, I often joke, one of my jobs here has been to be sort of chief salesman. That's not quite accurate. My job has been to make sure that the decision makers in defence understand here in Gibraltar what we can, from a defence perspective, cannot and could do, and just make sure that we're being thought of. And as I am advocating for the place, of course. And what defence needs to do is to decide, where to spend the finite resource to deliver best effect. But if you look at where we are and what we are, the sort of the strategic effect you get out of a relatively modest investment and a very, very lean team here, I might add, it's disproportionate, and so that makes it good news. And I think in terms of the DIP, the Defence Investment Plan, I mean, we don't yet quite know what that means, but
neither do they.
It doesn't quite. I don't think it makes a huge difference to our plans here. It might affect the timelines, but we've got a very clear idea of what needs to be done over time, and we'll just keep marching that. And we might be able to do some things faster, or we might have to slow some things down.
But at the moment, happy with the resources?
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, well, one would always wish for more.
Yes.
But you've got to look at it in the context of, the taxpayers' money and the finite resource and the much bigger demand across defence. And I think that what we've done is we've made the case successfully most recently through the SDR, and as a result of that, Gibraltar's got the attention it deserves, in my view, and is getting the investment it deserves. Would we always like more? Of course we would, but you can't be unrealistic.
Your successor, Commodore Tim Davey, will be no stranger to Gibraltar. I believe he captained HMS Collingwood, and he's been here before. In what state? And I know that you said at the beginning that you were cautiously happy, or in what state would you say you'd leave the naval base to him?
So I look at it and go, my word, it looks like a very different place to the way it did 4 years ago. And we're on day one of our handover, so we've covered quite a lot of ground today. Another 2 days to go, and there are a lot of really striking achievements by the team, and a lot better capability in many areas. But I will probably say to him, it's still a work in progress.
It's no secret that relations between Spain and the US aren't great. Al Khan's told GBC we could expect a higher US Navy presence. Do you think that this is something that we can expect?
So something, I mean, we're NATO allies, absolutely, and it's something that we have been working on, and you'll have noticed over the last few years we've had more American visitors here. The reason for that is, what we, the NATO alliance, needs is strategic resilience and strategic flexibility. And what we can provide here, it does exactly that, particularly for submarines. And so I think we can see a continued increase in that sort of activity.
When Gibraltar gets to be perhaps more on the map, a bit more under the spotlight, perhaps some twitchiness on how secure Gibraltar is?
Yeah, I think it's natural to make that link. I mean, we've got very obvious naval bases in the UK. We've got other overseas bases, and it's no secret. No, I was going to say it's no secret what goes on there. A lot of what happens in these places is not a secret, in the same way it is for Gibraltar. I think the way you have to look at it in terms of the overall picture and the consideration of defence and security of all of those places, and Gibraltar is absolutely part of that overall consideration.
I know it's before your time, but the MOD and the government's land deal meant you got rid of a large percentage of your housing stock. Could this present a problem for expansion?
So we have expanded the team over the last 4 years already, and I think it's unrealistic to expect it will expand a lot. But we could always see that happening as things develop. One of the things that will always limit us is somewhere for people to live. There are other solutions to that, but that would involve renting, which of course is very expensive here. Particularly, I think this is a challenge for the Royal Gibraltar Regiment. And one of the great things that we've had over the last couple of years is the government's bursary scheme, which offers sort of the equivalent of university education bursary to people to join the regiment to put towards their first home, which I think is a fantastic development and certainly helps ameliorate the problem.
How popular is joining the regiment?
So we have seen a real surge in recruitment just over the last 6 months, and some of that certainly is attributed to that bursary. But also the regiment have been really focused on getting out and making sure everybody understands who they are and what they do and what the opportunities are.
Do you think that with the military now, it's not recruitment that's a problem, but perhaps retention?
So we always tend to talk about the two together, not because you always have the same facts both, but they are sort of linked and usually linked to sort of more what's going on outside in wider society and how the armed services are viewed. But the challenge here has been perhaps sort of seeing what the regiment has done over the past years before, and so they're putting a lot of effort into showcasing that. And there's a lot to showcase. The regiment is out there, supporting wider UK defence operations across the NATO alliance. I've personally been to see them on live operations on Operation Kabrit in Estonia, very close to the Russian border. They've been as far afield as Iceland, Gambia, South America. They're out there and getting noticed. I get a lot of praise from commanding officers of units that they go to support, telling me what great soldiers they are, and that's a fantastic thing to hear. It really is.
What does conflict do? Does conflict attract soldiers, or does conflict put people off?
I don't think it's as simple as that. I don't think soldiers, generally speaking, and it's dangerous soldiers don't join up because they want to fight. They join up because they're attracted to being part of that organisation and have a sense of duty and a willingness to go and fight if necessary. There's no doubt that being on operations is really fulfilling and really focusing. And the RG soldiers who, for example, went away to Estonia and came back, I mean, they were all absolutely, buzzing about it, and even now, still talking with great pride about it. And I was really delighted that when General Rob McGowan was here a few weeks ago, we were able to award about 24 wider service medals. So those are medals not associated with a particular campaign, but accumulated frontline operational service, which is a wonderful recognition of what the regiment has been achieving.
Do you think anything else gives you that camaraderie? Any other?
It'd be hard to imagine, because there's the combination of sort of the teamwork that you might get from playing elite sport, but with the added pressure that each other's lives really depend on it. So I think there is something very, very special about that. Yes.
An issue that's been facing people with the MOD has been, and it's not just the MOD, because the airport has had all sorts of problems with flight cancellations due to the actual airlines themselves. But air traffic control has been a contributing factor to delays and cancellations. What's happening there? Because there was a time where there was a recruitment campaign.
So I think it's really important to keep it all in perspective, and flights being diverted, that's hugely disruptive. Of course, everybody gets that. It's a relatively small number of flights that get diverted, and for many different reasons. And here, as you know, it's most usually the weather. I mean, it's a challenging place to fly in and out of. Mm-hmm. But that's not to shirk our responsibilities at all. And we're very, very, very aware of our responsibilities for keeping the aerodrome, which supports the airport, open. I think the air traffic control issue you referred to was a while ago, probably about 3 years ago, and it was identified that there weren't enough air traffic controllers to have sufficient resilience to really guarantee services. So, after some talks with the commercial provider, which involves talks with unions and all sorts of things, and there are you can't just whistle an air traffic controller who can control in Gibraltar out of thin air. They have to be here for a while to understand the area. But the company recruited more air traffic controllers, so we now have greater resilience. And I think that's been a real success story. But of course, that's only part of it. There's all the other infrastructure as well, and we're absolutely bound to make sure that infrastructure is as good as it needs to be. We do err on the side of safety, naturally, because of air safety. So if there's any slight hint that something might not be working as well as it should be, that's a reason to perhaps delay or divert flights to be on the safe side. But I would point to there is absolutely investment, the right investment happening. We've just got 2 new generators, 2 standby generators going in just to serve the air traffic control, communications and radar services. And they're there in case there's a power outage. Those generators will automatically spin up and then continue to run the equipment within the very, very strict parameters that the Military Aviation Authority and the Civil Aviation Authority regulations require. And so we can keep the airport open.
Of course, a new radar in your time as well.
Yes, yeah. So that's another bit of progress. Absolutely.
The role of CBF is, of course, not just about challenges. There are ceremonial events which showcase what Gibraltar also does very well, and that's the pomp and circumstance. June saw Commodore Guy's last parade for the King's birthday. Welcome back to Viewpoint. No interview with a CBF would be complete without talking about incursions. In the great scheme of things, these appear to have paled into insignificance. I asked Commodore Guy about the challenges incursions represent and the responsibility of managing the situation to avoid escalation with a neighbouring NATO ally.
In the great scheme of things, incursions seem to pale into insignificance. Just how much of a challenge have they presented, and how much do they add to the responsibility of managing escalations, which, with, as you said earlier, a neighbouring NATO ally?
Yeah, it's a very finely judged balance, because on the one hand, sovereignty is absolute. And the rules are very clear, but the challenge is, of course, that Spain has different views on what those, on the basis for those rules. But I think what we have done is to create the conditions of where we understand each other. I think the responses have been very measured, and what we've succeeded in doing is, whilst at the same time being absolutely clear on our view on the sovereignty and who owns what, we've managed to sort of take most of the sting out of it, which I think has been really important as we've been continuing to negotiate the treaty.
In terms of perception, it seems like there have been fewer incursions in recent months.
So yes, there have. And I think that is as a result of the way that conditions on the water have been managed largely.
And I imagine because of the political overtures as well with the treaty. What effect do you think the treaty will have on policing BGTW?
So, on the one hand, it'd be easy to say none, because sovereignty doesn't change and jurisdiction doesn't change, and therefore what we have to do to deal with that sort of thing doesn't change. I mean, the constabulary duties are not actually part of. They're not a defence thing. We're there to demonstrate sovereignty and provide the conditions for constabulary forces, RGP and customs, to do their work. I think the one thing that will be significant in time is if we get to the planned joint patrols, which I think will be a great way forward in terms of continuing to build trust and just normalise conditions around our waters.
Okay, shall we look back at the 4 years that you've been here? What would you say the main challenges have been for you?
Main challenge. So I think I think the treaty, has been hugely challenging. I mean, we've ended up in a good place, but it has been quite the journey to get there, and that's been a pendulum that swung back and forth and has been studied very closely. I think my concern at times was that the so-called defence red lines, might end up being the reason for a non-negotiated outcome, but happily, we were able to.
No pressure.
Well, exactly. But we did successfully negotiate our way through that. So that was, I think I'll look back on that as one of the most sort of significant things. I think it is always challenging to compete for resource to do what you feel you want to do. So it often has felt to me, because I'm naturally quite impatient, that things aren't moving as quickly enough in terms of infrastructure. But that's a reality of process.
I suppose that when you've got 4 years to do something, I mean, I'm sure a politician can relate to you, you suddenly think, well, I need to get on with it because I've only got this time to do it in. And after that, it's not my baby anymore.
Absolutely. And I felt that from the outset. I mean, in point of fact, I've been here rather longer than most of my predecessors. But there is definitely this sense of needing to get on with it. And of course, we're surrounded by many other people in the organisation who take a much longer term view because they're here for much longer. So there is definitely, it's about setting the tempo and making sure we're heading in the right direction and doing what we can. But inevitably, as I hand over, there'll be a twinge of sadness that things that I've put in train I won't quite see coming to fruition. But then I'll, pick up the papers in years to come and say, yeah, good to see it happening.
Do you think you'll become an advocate of Gibraltar now?
Oh, absolutely. Yes. I mean, I think, and there are, an for Gibraltar from a defence perspective, but also just generally, yes.
Slightly gone native.
If you mean that in a positive way, then yes, absolutely.
I do. I do mean that in a positive way. We always say that about the governors. And of course, it hasn't all been work. You must have had some time to play. Have you enjoyed your time on the Rock away from the naval base?
Yeah, I mean, there is a reason that we've stayed for 4 years. Absolutely. I think I think the two go hand in glove. You've got to. Well, maybe you haven't got to, but I feel it's important that you enjoy what you do and enjoy the life that goes with it. And Katie and I have just had a fantastic time. Yes,
I think you do have to. It's part. It is. One doesn't go well without the other. You're certainly getting a very well-deserved send-off. So, what's next for Commodore Tom Guy?
Well, we have to. Well, we don't have to, but we're going to sail the boat back to the UK. Having arrived by boat, we're going to leave by boat, which I'm really looking forward to. Then we'll. The sea is sort of in my veins, so I think we'll spend a fair amount of our time afloat, but no other firm plans at the moment.
When you say sail the boat, it's quite a holiday, isn't it? You've made it sound like you're going to. It's quite nice, isn't it? What are your plans?
So out through the Straits, round Cape St Vincent, north up the coast of Portugal, and back to the UK.
Lovely. Al Khan spoke very fondly of British headquarters Gibraltar and its personnel. He described them as second to none.
Yeah. Sorry. It's quite, yeah. I mean, that's a really gratifying thing to hear. One of the, you didn't ask me what the greatest thing I'd done here, and I think the greatest thing I've done is with the team, and the team of teams, and the people. And, we have all these sort of, we've got the Army, Navy, Air Force, Regiment, the Gibraltar Defence Piece, and of course, 556 locally engaged civilians who do everything across the base, and without which we couldn't operate. And it's a unique command, and that's perhaps a dangerous thing to say, but I think I can say it with reasonable confidence. There's no other place quite like it. In terms of the span and the diversity and what we do and who we do it with, and then to hear that being reflected by someone like him in that way was really good and absolutely on the money. So I would take the opportunity to say thank you and well done. Thank you and really well done to the team, and keep it going, I think.
Thank you very much. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Been 4 magnificent years, absolutely extraordinary. We've loved the place. I think you'll have probably detected we're quite sad to be leaving, but we leave, we leave it in a great place, fantastic team. I'm delighted to have handed over to my successor, Tim Davey. The place is in thoroughly good hands, and we'll just leave here with just, the fondest of memories. I think the highlight has been working with the team here, the team of teams, the people. Yeah, that's the highlight.
And off you go on your boat.
Yes, we arrived in the boat 4 years ago, almost to the day, from America, and we're setting off, and we'll eventually end up back in the UK.
Well, good luck with your travels.
Thank you very much indeed. Thank you, it's been a pleasure.
I feel a little bit overwhelmed, but it's fabulous. It's a great feeling. The team have been hugely welcoming, and I feel like I'm in a really good place and ready to start my work.
And what are you expecting from the role?
So I know it's a big job, but I'm really confident that which I've received from my predecessor, Commodore Tom Guy, who has spent 4 years in the role, so he's obviously got a significant amount of experience. But we've had a great week this week for me to just about meet everybody, and I know that the team here are on top of all of their different parts of the brief. So I'm just looking forward to learning. I think listening is going to be really important for me, and then understanding the role such that I can start to hopefully add some value and support the team that are already working here.
And does anything particularly concern you or daunt you about the task ahead?
Daunting, absolutely, yes. This is quite. You've got me here at sort of minute 15 of me taking this role on, but actually no, I'm really confident that the team here are going to be superb. As I said, it's for me to learn. There's an awful lot for us to do, of course, in the context in which we are operating here as UK Ministry of Defence, supporting the people of Gibraltar and the governor of Gibraltar. That is the focus, and obviously upholding the sovereignty of Gibraltar. So there's an awful lot of work to do. As Commodore Tom said to me as he departed, this is very much a work in progress. I think it always will be, but we're up for the challenge, and I know there's a brilliant team here supporting me.
And how does it feel to be here in Gibraltar? It's a beautiful day. I understand it's not your first time here.
It's not my first time here. With plenty of time at sea in the Royal Navy, I've had the great privilege of coming here in ships and visiting. I have not worked in the headquarters before, so as I said, a lot for me to learn. And I think from a Gibraltar perspective, what is not to like? My family are here with me. We are settling in. We've had a very warm welcome, and we're really looking forward to learning and exploring some more in Gibraltar.
Are you able to talk about some of your career highlights to date? Anything you're particularly proud of?
So I'm proud of my career, of course. It's coming up to nearly 30 years now. It doesn't feel that long, which is a good thing. It's been great. My last job was commanding one of the Royal Navy's training establishments, HMS Collingwood, in Portsmouth, which was great fun. Before that, time in the Ministry of Defence, and time, of course, working in sea. And I would say the highlights have absolutely been time at sea. It's fantastic working in our ships and supporting some of our teams that are delivering the Royal Navy's warfighting outputs. But this, I think, I'm 20 minutes into my job, But this, I think, will absolutely be a highlight.
You have some optimism for that then.
Of course, glass is always half full, definitely.
And Gibraltar recently fitted out RAF Line Bay for countermine operations in the Gulf, and I believe this is a field that you have experience in.
It is. So I, as a warfare officer, as I said, but I specialise as a mine clearance diver and mine warfare officer in the early stage of my career. Much has changed in how we conduct mine warfare and mine countermeasures operations now. And that which you saw in Gibraltar, as you mentioned, RFA Line Bay, HMS Stirling Castle here, are very much at the forefront of the Royal Navy's autonomous capabilities. And that capability is now forward deployed, heading towards the Straits of Hormuz to deal with a really challenging situation in the Middle East. So fantastic that Gibraltar was able to be the launch pad for much of that work, and some superb support here for RFA Line Bay in getting her ready for sea and ready for operations.
Technology has evolved so much since, I imagine, the start of your career. Do you have a comment on that, how things have changed?
We all understand and know, we've seen from operations and warfare in Ukraine how important uncrewed aerial and uncrewed underwater systems are and will be in the future. So absolutely, that's the way we're going. The Royal Navy is absolutely leading the way, I believe. But of course, across defence, we're doing absolutely the same. It's going to be critical for how we warfight in the future. And I think that Gibraltar is going to be a superb test ground and bed where we can work to take some of those capabilities forward and deliver them on operations as quickly as we possibly can.